Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Monday. This is gonna be a really nice Monday. Currently 58 degrees, high of around 80. It's gonna be clear. Um, Air quality is poor, though. There is a weather advisory for that. And we have a waxing gibbous moon, so the very, very little corner of the left side is blacked out, and we're coming into a full moon soon. And 12:27 a.m. is the moon set, and 5:18 p.m. is the moon rise. So another nice, summer day here in the beginning of August. And fall is coming, man. Fall is coming. Summer went by quick. I'm starting to feel like I didn't get enough sun for winter coming upon us. So, anyway, I'm gonna try and get outside and um, get out there in the creation. Just you know, just be surrounded by God everywhere. And my 8-year-old that we're keeping home from camp this week, so I could spend time with her. Hopefully, and she likes fishing, right? She's not scared of worms, and she's not scared to fish either. She'll grab a fish and pull them off the hook and all that stuff. Uh, I have the not so funny running joke around the house that she's my little first mate, um, and hopefully pouring in. And I know there's never enough dad time. Dads out there, there's never enough dad time. But what time you do get, do your best, right? And she'll remember that. She'll remember that. So, we are in a study of Job, and we're in Job chapter 19. We're moving right along. I wish I could have got 2 in today, but there's a lot here. So, in the beginning of this, verses 3 through 5, right? These 10 times you have cast reproach upon me, and are you not ashamed to wrong me? See, here's what's happening. As they reproach him, and maybe there did need to be some reproach, but at a certain point, um, it shouldn't be used to elevate ourself, right? And he says, and even if it be true that I have erred, and we don't really know unless there's a confession. Just because somebody's going through a struggle, it doesn't necessarily mean they have erred. Um, so we've got to um, come at these things from a charitable position. We can't be making judgments of guilty and innocent, especially the whole purpose why they went to Job was to comfort him. And instead it turns into this beat down, right? They're verbally beating him down. My error remains with myself, right? So even if it be true that I've erred, it remains with myself, right? I'm going to stand before God for my error, not you, right? Not you. If indeed you magnify yourselves against me and make my disgrace an argument against me. So, right? They're when you magnify yourself, or even if you're not using their disgrace to push them down, to elevate yourself, but even if it makes you, there's this part of you that makes you feel like you're superior to them because you have not made this mistake. Because to elevate yourself, even in feeling, right? Um, that's sin, y'all. That's sin. And listen, everybody's only one decision away from being in a terrible place, right? One decision away from being in a terrible place. And so we do try to have empathy and take a charitable position, right? So one time I was in an IEP meeting and with a family that struggles, right? Family that struggles, and the mother was just like, this is happening, I'm living in my car, and um, you know, it, smells like urine because my sixth grade, all this stuff, right? And no food and all these things. And I had a lot of compassion for them. And one of the teachers, like, man, how are you so sympathetic for them? Like, she's made all these choices. And I said, you're only one choice away from being in this position. And she's like, I feel like I'm a lot of choices away from being in this position. And, well, I'm like, you're only one or two drinks away at deer camp from driving home and being in an accident, and you could be right here, right? It only takes one. It doesn't take much. Anybody could be in that position, right? So let's not feel elevated because we're not, okay? And because in verse 6, know then that God has put me in the wrong, right? Now, that put me in the wrong, that same verb is used in chapter 8, verse 3, to pervert, right? So God makes these things happen. He makes the change here. He put me in the wrong and closed his net about me, right? This is just because these things are happening. It's God's plan. It's God's will. It's God's sovereignty. And who's to say what's fair? Who's to say what I do and don't deserve? Only God, not my friends who are supposed to be comforting me that are feeling elevated because they're not in this position that I'm in. Come on. Now, behold, I cry out violence. This is a great verse. I love this. Behold, I cry out violence, but I am not answered. I call for help, but there is no justice. And remember Abel? We talked about Cain and Abel. Now, remember, Abel was slain, and his blood cried out from the ground. But why, how and why? Because remember, his sacrifice was pleasing to the Lord. It was his sacrifice that was acceptable. So why did he get killed? Right? Why did he get killed? Makes you think a little bit, right? Verses 8 through 13. This is a description of possibly, remember Bildad, he gave a description of what hell was like. We talked about that. But maybe this is what hell feels like. He, God, has walled up my way, right? He, God, has set darkness upon. He, God, has stripped. He's not saying God, I'm adding that, but that's who he's talking about. He, God, has stripped me from glory and taken the crown from my head. He's taken everything, right? That's what hell feels like. He, God, has kindled his wrath against me and counts me as his adversary. That's what hell feels like. You're counted as an adversary of God, eternal distance from God. Come on, man. He, God, breaks me down on every side, and I am gone. Right? He, God, has kindled his wrath against me and counts me as adversary. He, God, his troops, God's troops. Now Satan and his enemies are also God's troops, and he unleashes them. Remember how this whole thing started, right? So Satan is acting as the hand of God, but it's Satan's own personality. Okay? Now it's not God doing it. It's God knowing his personality and letting him carry out his plan. Okay? Therefore, he is God's soldiers. Okay? He is God's troops. His demonic army is God's troops in that. Not just in that sense, but in that very real application of carrying out his providence and sovereignty. Okay? They have cast up their siege ram. Right? He, God, has put my brothers far from me. Now, this verse 13 here, this starts to transition to describe his isolation. But this isolation is part of what this hell feels like. You feel totally isolated, right? He has put my brothers far from me, and those who knew me are wholly estranged from me. You have nothing. You have nothing. No comfort, no no place, no status. You have no. His wrath is against you. So I guess that's no comfort again. The enemy is is always pricking at you. Um, it, you, it's just this distance, and so now, if this is a picture of hell, this is how he's feeling as he's going through this, and then his friends are banging on him, bam, 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 right? So then he goes into this isolation, right? My relatives have failed me. My close friends have forgotten me. The guests in my house and my mates ever just count me as a stranger. Could you imagine if I have guests over and I'm the stranger? That's how he feels, right? He's sitting there on his stoop. These are supposed to be his friends. They're elevating themselves based off of his despair. He feels like a stranger. I called on my servant and he gives me no answer. I must plead with him with my mouth for mercy. My breath is strange to my wife, right? Even young children despise me. Now that's tough. If you ever worked in children's church, right? These kids, uh, now maybe some are disgruntled because they had to get up early on a Sunday or whatever, but for the most part, they don't despise the person who's in there, trying to teach, right? And when they get around their friends or whatever, they might get unruly and all that other stuff, but that's just being around your friends. That's not a despising you while you're in there, right? For a child to despise you, that's stiff, right? All my intimate friends abhor me, right? They've turned against me. Now, verse 20, my bones stick to my skin and to my flesh. He's so dry and so empty that there's no life, and it's just the bones. Then he says, and I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. Now, a commentary said, like, this English idiom fits this context. However, we don't necessarily know that that's what it means in the Hebrew. Okay. However, because it fits in the context, we can take it for what it means, right? Context is king, right? The context of what is being said and to whom it's being said matters. And, here, yes, he has been drained, right? His bones are sticking to his skin and to his flesh, right? But he says, and I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. He's lucky to be alive. He knows it, right? And then, so verse 21, 22, he laments, right? He laments God's hand on him. Have mercy on me. You know, why do you, like God, pursue me? Why are you not satisfied with my flesh? Right? Isn't this enough? Isn't this enough? Oh, that my words were written. So now, oh, that my words were written. I think this is neat. In verses 23 and 24, he like wants to write his own obituary, so that, because nobody else is going to believe that he's innocent, right? Or that he's faithful. And then this is verses 25 through 27. And this is really what I wanted to get at, and I should have took less time to get here and spent more time here. He says, for I know, he's not guessing, right? I know that my Redeemer lives. Even in all this, he knows, right? There's no wavering, right? Then, and he says, at the last, he will stand upon the earth. My Redeemer lives, and he's going to stand on the earth. And we know Jesus does come, and he does stand on the earth. He does die, and he does come back and stand on the earth. He did ascend into heaven, and he is again going to come back and stand on the earth to reign for 1,000 years. That is our Redeemer. Ooh, doesn't that fire you up? And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh, I shall see God. I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold. This is going to happen as a matter of fact, and not another. So when we stand in the faith, we have a Redeemer. He's going to pull us from the certain death that we deserve, and redeem us, and cash us in, turn us into heaven. And we're not going to see the enemy. We are going to see our Redeemer. And then he says, my heart faints within me. Yeah, it does get hard, y'all. It does get hard. Then he says, if you say, how will you pursue him? And the root of the matter is found in him. Be afraid of the sword, for wrath brings the punishment of the sword, that you may know there is a judgment. So we must be careful, right? Leaders, parents, coaches, counselors. We need to be careful. A rebuke is not turned from righteous to wrath, right? We need to be careful that a rebuke is not turned from righteous to wrath, especially with people we love. It's easy to fall into this position where we feel slighted, right? Where we feel slighted. And so let's be careful not to get there, because going back to verse 2, all right, we're going to bring it all the way back and be done. How long will you torment me and break me in pieces with words? Words do hurt. Words do hurt, okay? And at a certain point, we need to be careful that we don't turn bitter against ones we love, because especially if we think that this calamity that they're in is because of sin. Yes, we do confront sin, and we do not accept it or say it's okay. But at a certain point, we've got to back off. We've got to back off. Watch our words. Not let their sin or their calamity elevate us. Yeah. We do gotta be careful, y'all. Hey, have a great Monday, you guys. Get out, feel the sun on you, and know the Lord is around. All right, guys.